Hey everyone, it's Tracy Martirana here from Holistic Wellness with Tracy. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm inviting you to join me in the kitchen while I make a vegetable side dish. It'll be beets, I should say roasted beets with dill and parsley. And it is great any time of year, but it also just happens to look beautiful and festive on your holiday table. I just spent the last few minutes talking to myself because I forgot to hit record. So let me back up and tell you what I just did. I scrubbed my beets nice and clean. I have some beets from my local farmers. They came pretty clean, but I'm roasting them with the skin on, so I want to make sure that they are very clean. So I scrubbed them up with a scrub brush, cut the stem off, cut the root off, and then I cut them in half as well because I want them to cook a little bit on the faster side. I lined this pan with some tin foil, put the beets in with maybe a couple teaspoons of coconut oil, not a lot, just a little bit, and maybe a teaspoon or two of water just to add a little bit of moisture. I have the edges of my tin foil or my aluminum foil coming up so that when I make this little packet and they bake, the juices that they release will stay sort of contained, and anything that does seep out of the foil will be contained in the pan. There, you're brought up to speed. So I'm just gonna wrap this up. Again, pulling the edges up, trying to keep the juices inside. And then I'm gonna bake these until they're tender when pierced with a fork. I'm baking at 425 degrees. Sometimes I do 400. Sometimes I do them whole, sometimes I do them halved. So the amount of time, I'm gonna guess it's probably gonna take them about 40 minutes, but I will probably come back after 30 and check them and see how they are. Whew. So I'll meet you back here in about 30-40 minutes. Nice and steamy. They're getting there. I'm going to put them in for just a couple more minutes, and then I'm going to pull them out and just let them cool until I can at least handle them without burning myself. So I let them cool just a little bit, and now I'm going to peel them. Gloves so I don't stain my hands. They're still pretty warm, but now that they're cooked, the peels are actually pretty easy to take off. I just take my knife and just sort of scrape the peel off, if you will. And if it's not perfect, that's okay. You're just trying to get the bulk of the peel off. Now, while I'm peeling, let's talk about what I can do with any leftovers. Obviously, you could just eat them as a side dish to another protein. Just warm them back up a little bit. You could eat them cold. I actually like to take leftovers and add them to a green salad. So just make a nice tossed salad, add in maybe some roasted butternut squash along with roasted beets. Another thing I like to use them for is a Buddha bowl, which if you've never made a Buddha bowl, it's hard to say. If you've never made a Buddha bowl, it's pretty easy. It's really just a great way to use leftovers because you really, like, all the ingredients are very interchangeable. Obviously, you're gonna take a bowl and you're gonna start it with some sort of whole grain, whether it's rice or quinoa. You can go kind of crazy and do something like farro. I myself usually do quinoa. And then some sort of green. You can either keep it like light and fresh and do like just salad greens, or you could steam up some spinach, some kale, something along those lines. And then some sort of protein, because it's a Buddha bowl, if you think about that, it's usually vegetarian protein, but you could use really anything. You could use chicken breast, but typically it would be something like tofu or beans. If you're doing either of those, obviously you could just do plain chunks of tofu or just plain cannellini beans or black beans or chickpeas, garbanzo beans, that would be. But it's always better to like flavor them a little bit, add some garlic, some spice, and then just whatever vegetables you have on hand. So again, roasted beets would be delicious, roasted carrots, I mean really anything roasted, but they don't have to be roasted, they could be prepared any way you want. And then you could also just make some quick pickled beets. So just take your leftover chunks of beets, put them in a jar, add in a little salt, little pepper, and then a 50-50 mixture of apple cider vinegar and water. Put that in the fridge, let it sit for a few days, and you have quick pickled beets. Now to finish these, I'm just going to chop them up into fairly small pieces and get them into a bowl. So I'm just cutting this into sort of like bite-sized pieces. You can go really as big or as small as you want. I'm doing the dice. And it's funny, I struggle to even really think of this as a recipe because it's really just so basic. Once you cook the beets and cut them up, you can really spice them however you want, or flavor them however you want, I should say. You can keep them very plain, just like this, add a little sprinkle of salt and pepper. I'm going to add some fresh herbs, but you could even change that up and use different herbs. And as simple as this is, it's delicious. And again, they just look pretty. And if the only beets you've ever had are beets from a can, I definitely suggest just try it out. Grab a bunch from your local grocery store, clean them, roast them, chop them up and eat them, and see what you think. They're so much better. Now I'm using dill and parsley. You could also use cilantro, that would be very delicious, but I happen to think dill and beets, just the flavors just go very well together. I'm just chopping up a handful of each. Again, it's your food, so add more or less depending on what you like. If you're not a big fan of either one of these, skip it. You could do just dill, you could do just parsley. For both these herbs, I'm just sort of getting rid of the bigger stems. Nobody wants to bite into a big dill or parsley stem. Wouldn't hurt you, but I'm just gonna chop those up. My hair is getting in my face. I want this. Okay. Just bunch it all up together and start chopping. Ooh. And not to lose a finger. I'm also going to add just a little bit of salt. It's just pink salt, use whatever you have. If I was serving this warm, I would add in maybe a little more of the coconut oil and then pop this into like a warm oven just to keep it a little warm until serving. But if you're serving at room temperature or cold, any more oil than what we added when we cooked it tends to congeal, and then that's just not very attractive. I mean, it's just beets and some herbs, but it tastes so good and it looks so pretty. You could serve this up in a nice white serving bowl and it would look beautiful on your holiday dinner table. But you can also just serve this Wednesday night beside like a roasted chicken breast or a grilled mushroom. Anything. It's yum. Try it. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you will give beets with dill and parsley a try. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Have a great day.